Hello everyone. So today I'm going to be going over all of the basics of Java to show you how Java works and how to do some cool stuff with it. So Java is a great programming language to learn because it's object-oriented, meaning that once you know the basics, you'll be able to create objects for anything and everything. Before we get started though, I'm going to go ahead and just teach you guys a couple of the introductory stuff so that you know how Java works. So as you guys can see, I've got Eclipse opened up. This is an IDE that supports writing code in Java. And I went ahead and I created a main.java file, which is going to contain all of the Java code. What you'll notice is that Java has a lot of auto-generated code. Unlike other programming languages, Java needs all this in order to be able to execute anything. So let's go ahead and break down what we see on the screen. So the first line says public class main, meaning that we currently have a class created with the name of main. Don't worry too much about that. Just keep in mind whenever you make a project, you're typically going to have this class right here be the same as the name of the file that you're currently working inside of. So since we have main.java, this right here is going to be the main class. And then inside of that, we see that we have public static void main, string, square brackets, and then the args variable. And so this line right here is actually a lot more important than you would think it is, and most IDEs are going to auto create this for you. But in the case that you're ever writing in Java and you don't get this line, you want to go ahead and make sure you type it out, because Java essentially is going to look for this specific line and then execute all of the code that exists between these two curly braces. So whatever goes inside of here is what is going to be run right off the bat. So once you have this boilerplate code written out, you can actually go ahead and get started with writing in Java. So the first thing we're going to go ahead and do is everyone's favorite project, which is printing hello world to the screen. So to do that in Java, I'll be honest, it's a little bit more tedious than in other programming languages, but it's pretty easy to wrap your head around. So essentially, we're going to type the word system with a capital S, then we're going to say it dot out, and then dot println, just like that. Then we're going to have a pair of parentheses that comes after it, and then double quotation marks. And now inside of these quotation marks, we can put any message that we want to display whenever we run the project. So if I go ahead and type in hello world, and then a semicolon to the end of the line, we can now press run, save the changes, and we'll get hello world printed back in the output. So that looks good. Just to break down what's going on here, so we're using system out to retrieve the print function, and then whatever is inside of the parentheses and quotation marks is exactly what's going to get displayed down below in the output. The reason we're using println as opposed to just print is that the println function is going to be giving us an automatic new line after it displays this string. So what I mean by that, if we were to go ahead and copy this line and then paste it once more down below, and let's just change it up a little bit and say, how's it going? Now if we run it one more time, we'll notice that the second print statement is going to get displayed right underneath the first one. So we get hello world on the top, and then how's it going right underneath it. And the reason they're not on the same line is because we used println instead of print. And so just to see the changes, if I were to go ahead and get rid of the ln in the first print statement, save the changes, and click run, what you'll notice is that it's going to print hello world, and then it's going to have how's it going be attached to the word world. So they're going to be completely side by side and there's no separation. So just keep in mind, if you want different print statements to be on separate lines, use println, and then if you ever want them to be on the same line, you can go ahead and just use the dot print function. But this is going to be the structure for displaying words down below in the output. Some other cool stuff that you can actually do with the print statement is some mathematical operations. So if we go ahead and type out system.out.println, and now inside of these parentheses, we can actually write down some math calculations, and Java will calculate it and tell us the response. So if I wanted to know what 123 times 987 was, we can type it out like this. So 123, we use an asterisk to tell Java that we want to do multiplication, and then the other number, and we always want to end the line with a semicolon. And now if I run this, we'll see that we get the response printed out down below. So it's 121,401. And we can actually also do math with addition. We can do subtraction and division as well. So we could say 123 plus 987 minus 222 times 80, and then divided by 4. That's just a bunch of random stuff, but we can actually have all of these side by side, And what's going to happen here is it's initially going to start by doing 222 times 80 because math in Java is going to use the order of operations and multiplication comes before addition and subtraction. So then whatever this result is going to be will be divided by 4, and then it's going to go back and add these two numbers and then subtract this number from there. So if we run this, we should get a pretty large negative number. Yep, so we get negative 3,000 down below the output, which is the answer of this mathematical expression. So next what I want to go over with you guys is a concept in Java called data types. So different values in Java are going to be stored in different ways. And what I mean by that is if we want to create a variable for a number, it's going to be created a little bit differently than if we wanted to make a variable for a string. And so just to quickly recap what a data type is, by the way, right here where I use the double forward slash, this is Java's notation for a comment. So anywhere that you have a double forward slash on a line, everything after it is going to get ignored by Java. It won't think this is code, it just knows this is like a note to yourself, and it's going to skip over it. So this doesn't give us any errors. But if we try typing that out without the double slashes, and then you'll notice we get these errors. So using them just cleans up everything. And then if you want to have a multi-line comment, you can use a forward slash and then a star, and then if you press enter, you'll get the auto-generated closing portion, which is the same thing in reverse. So star and then another forward slash. So this is the beginning of a multi-line comment, and this is how you end the multi-line comment. And so now in here, I'm going to go ahead and list out the different data types. So the first one we're going to talk about is called an int, which stands for integer. And what that's going to be is any positive or negative values that are whole numbers, and that includes the number 0. So for example, we can go ahead and say like the number 10, the number 500, we can have negative 25, we can have the number 0 itself, negative 3. So all of these are examples of integers. The next data type I want to go over with you guys is called a double. And a double is very similar to an int, so likewise it's going to be positive or negative values that include decimal places, as well as the number 0. So some examples of doubles are going to be like 1.2, we can have 5.68, we can have negative 10.987, we could have just 3.0, since it has the 0.0, it's going to be classified as a double. So all of these are different examples of numbers that are going to be grouped up as doubles. The next data type I want to go over with you guys is called a string. And so a string is just going to be a word or phrase that is wrapped inside of quotation marks. So for example, we could have hello world inside of some quotation marks as a string, just like this. We could also have just like someone's name, so we could say Bob inside of double quotes. Now Bob is going to be a string. We could even put a number inside of quotation marks and then classify that number as a string. So right here we have the number 10, which by itself looks like an integer, but in this case, since there's double quotation marks surrounding it, as far as Java is concerned, it'll be stored as a string and not an integer. The next data type I want to show you guys is called a char, which stands for character. And characters have to be wrapped with a single quotation mark. And so some examples of characters are going to be like the letter A inside of a single apostrophe. We could have the letter like capital Z. We could have a number inside of a single quote. We could have a special character like a question mark. So each of these are going to be characters. And just a heads up, even a space can be a character, just like that. And then the last main data type that I want to go over with you guys is called a Boolean. And what Booleans are going to be variables that contain either true or false. And so there's only two examples for them, which are just as you'd expect them to be, true and false, like that. So these are the 5 main data types that you guys should try to keep in mind with Java. There are definitely more out there, but these are the core 5, and then the majority of others are going to be similar or a combination of these. But if you know these 5, you should be good to go. So now that we know the main 5 data types, let's go ahead and create some actual variables that are going to be storing these data types inside of them. So for example, I can go ahead and type in int x is going to be equal to the number 100. And so now we went ahead and we created a variable x that we specified as an integer data type, and we gave it a value of 100. So now if I were to go ahead and print it out, so I can say system.out.println and then type in x in here, what you'll notice down below in the output is that we're going to be seeing the value of x as opposed to the letter of x in the console. So on the last line of the output, it's just going to say 100 because that's the value that the x variable is associated with. Likewise, we can go ahead and create variables for each of the other data types. So if I said double is equal to 3.14, and then I copied, or so we have to actually say double and then a variable name, so we can call this pi. And now I can copy the print statement and paste it down here, and so if I print out pi, we'll get 3.14 printed back. Likewise, we can actually make a string as well. Just keep in mind, string needs to have a capital S, and then we can call this name and set it equal to Bob Smith, give it a semicolon, and now at the end, I can go ahead and say system.out.println, and we're going to pass in name. So that line is going to be printing out Bob Smith. So I think you guys get the point of how this works. So whenever you create a variable name, you can actually reference it later on, and instead of using the name itself, it's going to be retrieving the value that it's associated with. You just want to try to keep in mind that whenever you specify the data type, it has to match whatever you're setting it equal to. Like if I said int name and then I tried associating it with a string, Java's not going to understand what's going on, and we're going to be getting an error. But right now, if I run this, we should see 100 printed back, then 3.14 printed back, followed by Bob Smith printed back at the very bottom. So just like that. And now just to show you guys what it's going to look like if we mix and match them. So if I change string here to int, for example, and then we tried running it, you'll see that we automatically get an error, and then down below, it's going to give us a message as to what went wrong. So let's go ahead and take a closer look at that. Yep, so as you guys can see, it says cannot convert from string to int. So it doesn't really know how to handle this information. So just try to make sure that your data types match the values that you're associating them with. One thing I do want to mention though is integers and doubles have a special case to where if you create a variable as a double and then set it equal to a value without a decimal, what you'll notice is that it's gonna automatically give it a decimal value and then convert it for you without you having to do any work. So we can say double pi equals 3, and then even though 3 is an integer, it's going to automatically convert it to a double and give it the 0.0. However, if you try doing the same thing in reverse, you'll notice something else happens. So if we say 100.7 and then we run this, we get an error because it's not as easy to convert a double to an integer as it is to convert an integer to a double. Because in some cases, we might want this to round up to 101. Maybe in other cases, we want to keep it as 100 and ignore the decimal altogether. And so Java doesn't know which case we want to use, so it's not able to automatically convert it for us. So integer to double works just fine, but double to integer is going to give you an error. So just keep that in mind. So now that we understand data types and variables, I'm going to go ahead and show you guys a new concept called if statements. And so let me go ahead and clear these lines of code right here, and we'll get started with this. So before we start the if statement, I'm going to go ahead and create an integer variable that we're going to set equal to age, and we'll say that the age for this example is 21. And so now what we want to do is, based off of the value of this age variable, we want to print either the age is for a child or the age is for an adult. So either we're going to be seeing child printed back or adult printed back. And the way we can actually pick and choose which one to print back is using the if statement. So we can go ahead and say if parentheses. And now inside of these parentheses, we need to put an expression that's going to evaluate to either true or false. And then if it's true, it's going to execute the first portion, and if it's false, it's going to execute the second one. So we can go ahead and say if, and then in the parentheses we'll say age is greater than or equal to 18. Then we're going to add an opening curly brace, press enter, and it's going to automatically give us a closing one. And now inside of this if statement, we can put the system.out.println, and then we're going to print the message adult. And now we need to add one more case for if the age we provided is less than 18. So we can go ahead and say else, and then give it a new pair of curly braces, press enter, and now we're going to say system.out.println, and now in these parentheses we're going to say child. So what's happening here is we have an age variable that is associated with the number 21, and then we're going to be plugging 21 into this age variable right here, and it's going to check if 21 is greater than 18 is true, then we'll print out adult, and then if 21 is greater than 18 is false, then we'll be printing child. So if we run this right now, we should get adult printed back. So let's go ahead and test this out, and then click on the run button. And so now down below in the output, we see we get adult printed back. So that looks good. Let's go ahead and change the age to something that's less than 18 to make sure the other condition works. So we'll make it 11, press run. And now down below in the output, what you'll notice is we get child printed back, just like that. So that's how if conditions in Python work. You just need to make sure that whatever condition you put in between these parentheses evaluates to either true or false. So in this case, either age is going to be greater than 18 and we get true, or age is not greater than 18 so we get false. There's only two possible outcomes of this expression, making sure that we either print out adult or we print out child. There's no other cases. So just to recap everything that we talked about today, you always want to make sure that you have a class whenever you create a Java project that matches the same name as the file. So in this case, the class is called main and the file is called main, so that matches up. Then inside that class, you want to have this line right here where it says public static void main string square bracket args, and then all the code that goes between the curly braces after this line and the closing curly braces for that same line is what's going to get executed whenever you click on the run button. To print out information, you can go ahead and say system.out.print or .println, depending on if you want a new line to come after that output. You can also do math using the print or println functions. And then if you do math, just try to remember that it's going to be using the order of operations. After that, we went ahead and discussed the different data types that Java has. The first one is integer, which is a positive or negative whole number, including 0, for example, 10, 500, -25, so on and so forth. Then we discussed doubles, which are positive or negative values that include decimal places, as well as the number 0, so like 1.2, 5.68. Then we talked about strings, which is any word or phrase that is wrapped inside of double quotation marks. So let me go ahead and specify that just a little more clearly. If you try doing this with a single quote, kind of like in Python, you're going to be getting an error. So try to keep in mind a string needs to have double quotations. Next, we talked about characters, which is similar to a string, but it's only going to have a length of 1 character and it needs to have a single quotation mark, or in other words, an apostrophe. And then lastly, we have booleans, which are conditions that contain either true or false. After that, we went ahead and we talked about how to actually create these variables. So for example, we can make an age variable that we specify as an integer data type by saying int age, and then after the equal sign, we can go ahead and give the age variable a value that it's going to correspond to, just like this. So int age equals 11 gives the variable age a value of 11. And then using this if statement here, we can actually customize which output we get based off of the result of this expression. So in this case, since age is 11 and 11 is not less than 18, this expression evaluates to false. So it's going to skip this print statement and then jump down to the else portion and print out child. And then if we changed the 11 to 21, then 21 is greater than 18, so it evaluates to true, and we should be getting adult printed back. So I think that's going to wrap it up for today's video. I hope you guys found this introduction useful, and I hope you guys learned a lot. Have a great day, guys.